course, like I said, being a chicken farmer, I didn't have much chance to do any cowboying, but I did get to ride a horse once when I was a kid, and when a friend from school invited me out to the riding stables one Saturday to ride with him. Now, this is a true story that happened a little over 50 years ago, but I got to thinking about it a little while back, and I seem to remember it like it was yesterday. So I wrote this little poem about my first and last experience on a horse. And this is called Me and Old Neil. Well, I was in 7th grade at St. Mary's School, and I'd never been near a horse. But when Mike Bailey invited me to go riding with him, I just said, sure, of course. See, Mike's family kept horses at Braswell Stables, just a little ways out of town. Because we grew up in the city where horses were not allowed. But I had no doubt I could ride a horse. I mean, how hard could it be? I'd watch them do it every week at the Saturday matinee. So Mama packed us up a lunch, and Mike's mom drove us out. But I pretty quickly realized I didn't know what this was all about. But Mike told me I could ride Old Neil. Well, I thought that sounded okay. He was big and old and gentle, they said, so he was mine for the day. With a lot of help, I got him saddled, pretty much according to plan. But when I tried to climb on board, well, that's when the trouble began. I tried to step up into the stirrup, but every time one foot left the ground, he'd just take a big step sideways and try to knock me down. But finally, Mike and Mrs. Braswell were able to hold him tight while I climbed up into the saddle. But that was just the start of the fight. First, he ran back inside the barn and under some low-hanging beams, and he kept trying to knock me off while I tried not to scream. So I got a few big knots on my head and some scrapes up and down my back, but I finally got him under control. It seemed I'd found the knack. So we rode a few times around the corral, and well, that went pretty well. So we started down the trail to the creek. Things went plumb to hell. He just kept trying to scrape me off against every tree and fence. I probably should have just given up, but I never had that much sense. I swore I'd stick with him if it killed me. For a while, it looked like it might. But we kept riding through the morning, and by lunchtime, well, I was doing all right. Old Neil just never seemed to like me, but heck, I figured that was okay. We were only going to be together for the rest of that one day. But then after lunch, we decided to ride to the A&W root beer stand. Because Mike knew a girl that worked down there, and she might just have a friend. Well, we hung out down there for a while, but the girl never showed. So we headed back to the stable, following that old gravel road. But just as soon as we got inside of the stable, old Neil headed for home. Man, he took off running for the barn just as fast as he could go. And the more I yelled at him to stop, the faster he seemed to run. And I wondered why I ever thought riding horses would be fun. Man, I was bouncing in the saddle and my legs were just a-flopping. And old Neil just kept on running. Man, he showed no sign of stopping. And Mike kept yelling at me to slow down. Believe me, I was trying. But then old Neil made a sharp left turn, and I just went flying. And I landed flat on my face in that hard old gravel road, while old Neil kept right on running, heading straight for that cattle guard. Of course, I was running and trying to catch him, but I never had a chance. And already my face was swelling up, and that eye was closing fast. But I watched him cross that cattle guard, and God, I thought sure he'd be crippled. But they said his feet were so big, he just sailed across without a ripple. Then Mrs. Braswell put some kind of cream on my face, which didn't really help a lot, but I climbed back up on old Neil, and we rode till it was dark. But then when I walked in that front door, Mama screamed and ran for the priest. She never saw anything like me, she said. She thought I was blind, at least. And man, my face was all swollen and kind of green and purple and blue. When I first looked in the mirror, man, I about started screaming too. But Father O'Connor came over and blessed my face. I guess that made Mama feel better. And of course, all the neighbors came over, and Dr. Sumner dropped in later. Then next week, when I went back to school, I found the story had gotten around. But they were treating me like a hero just for falling on the ground. It seems they had heard that I got bucked off and then got kicked in the face. I thought that sounded better than what really took place. So I didn't tell anybody how it really had been, but I just never wanted to ride horses again. Thank you very much.
Pete Kennedy, everybody, give it up.